close your eyes for a moment. Imagine this. You are standing in ancient Egypt 5,000 years ago. What is that feeling? Is it wonder? Is it peace? Is it the quiet sense that you are not alone in the world? The ancient Egyptians felt it too, and over thousands of years that feeling grew into something extraordinary. It grew into devotion, into religion, into one of the deepest bonds between a human being and an animal that the world has ever seen. Welcome to English Through Great Stories. Today I am your storyteller, and the story I want to tell you is one of the most beautiful and fascinating stories in all of human history. It is a story about love, about fear, about survival, about the sacred. It is the story of why the people of ancient Egypt, one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known, came to worship the cat. The sun is setting over the Nile River. The air is warm and it smells of river water and desert sand. The sky above you is painted in deep orange and gold. And then, very quietly, a small creature walks toward you. It sits down at your feet. It looks up at you with calm, golden eyes, and you feel something. Chapter 1. The Desert and the Gods. To understand why cats became sacred in ancient Egypt, we must first understand the world the Egyptians lived in, because their world was not like ours. It was a world of extremes, a world where life and death lived right next to each other, where the difference between survival and disaster was very, very thin. Egypt is mostly desert, and the desert in ancient times was not a place of beauty. It was a place of danger. The sun was brutal, water was rare. Strange animals moved through the darkness, scorpions, vipers, and other creatures that could kill a human being in a matter of hours. The desert was unpredictable, and in ancient times the unpredictable was something to be feared and deeply respected. But running through the middle of this dry and burning land was a miracle, the Nile River. The ancient Egyptians called it the Great River of Life. Every year the Nile flooded its banks, leaving behind a rich, dark, fertile soil. In this soil, wheat and barley grew in abundance. Without the Nile, there would have been no Egypt. There would have been no civilization at all. The ancient Egyptians were deeply aware of how fragile their world was. They could not control the desert. They could not fully control the Nile. They could not stop disease, drought, or death. And so, naturally, they looked upward. They looked to the heavens. They looked for gods. And in their world of extremes, they found not one god, but many. Hundreds of gods, each responsible for a different part of life and the natural world. There was Ra, the sun god, who sailed across the sky each day in a golden boat. There was Osiris, god of the dead and the afterlife. There was Isis, the great goddess of magic and motherhood. There was Anubis, with the head of a jackal, who guided the souls of the dead through the underworld. To the ancient Egyptians, the world was filled with divine power. Every river, every storm, every creature, all were connected to something far greater than themselves. Chapter 2. The Gift That Walked on Paws. Cats did not always live with human beings. In the beginning, they were wild. Scientists and historians believe that cats first began to come closer to human settlements around 10,000 years ago, not in Egypt, but in the Middle East, in a place called the Fertile Crescent. This was when human beings first began to farm the land and store food, and farming, it turned out, changed everything. When people began to store grain, wheat, barley, millet, they attracted visitors, mice, rats, and other small animals that loved nothing more than a warm storage room full of food. These animals were a serious problem. They could destroy a village's entire food supply in a matter of weeks. Hunger, starvation, all of this could follow if the grain was lost. The grain was not just food, it was survival itself. And then, quietly, from the edges of the fields and the shadows near the walls, a small predator appeared, the wild cat. It followed the mice, it hunted the rats, it slipped through the darkness with perfect silence and extraordinary skill. The wild cat was not tame, it was not a pet, but it was doing something miraculous for the farmers. Without being asked, without being trained, it was protecting their food. Over many generations, the wild cats that came close to human settlements were the ones that survived best. They had more food, more safety, and the humans who welcomed them, or at least did not chase them away, kept their grain stores safer. Slowly, very slowly, over hundreds and then thousands of years, the wild cat and the human being moved toward each other. Not with a leash, not with a cage, but with a kind of quiet, mutual understanding. By the time the great civilization of Egypt rose along the banks of the Nile, around 3,000 years before the birth of Christ, the domestic cat was already becoming part of daily life. And in Egypt, with its enormous granaries and its complete dependence on stored food, the cat was not just useful, it was essential. It was, in every practical sense, a gift that the earth had given to the people of the Nile. Chapter 3. More than a hunter. The Egyptians quickly realized that the cat was more than just a guardian of grain. In the warm Egyptian climate, snakes were a constant danger. Cobras, vipers, and other venomous snakes found their way into homes, into fields, and into sleeping areas where families rested at night. A snake bite could kill a child before morning. And the cat, swift, fearless, and perfectly designed by nature, hunted snakes too. The cat also hunted scorpions. These small, deadly creatures hid in shoes, in dark corners, under sleeping mats. A scorpion's sting was painful, and for a child or a weakened person, it could be fatal. The Egyptians watched in wonder as cats seemed to sense these dangers before any human could. Cats would circle, pounce, and kill, all with a kind of calm, unhurried confidence that seemed almost supernatural. Imagine being a mother in ancient Egypt. Your child is sleeping on a mat of woven reeds, the room is warm and dark, and in the corner your cat is sitting very still, its eyes fixed on something you cannot see. Then it moves, fast as lightning, and a scorpion is dead. Your child is safe. You did not even know the danger was there. To that mother, in that moment, the cat was not just an animal, it was a protector. It was something sent by the gods. And the Egyptians began to notice other things about cats. They noticed that cats were independent. They could not be commanded like a dog. They came and went as they pleased. They moved with a grace that seemed otherworldly. They stared into empty corners as if seeing things that no human eye could see. They appeared perfectly calm even in the face of danger. And they were devoted, truly devoted to the families they chose to live with. In a world full of chaos and danger, the cat represented something precious: order, protection, calm, mystery, beauty. The Egyptians began to see the cat not just as an animal, but as a symbol, a living symbol of everything they hoped their world could be. Chapter 4. Bastet, the goddess with the cat's face. It is not surprising, then, that a goddess appeared. She was called Bastet, and she became one of the most beloved and widely worshipped goddesses in all of ancient Egypt. Her name is very old, and its exact meaning is still debated by scholars, but she was, at her heart, a goddess of the home, a goddess of protection, of fertility, of joy, and of love. In the earliest centuries, Bastet was depicted as a fierce lioness. She was a warrior goddess, powerful and dangerous. But as time passed, as the centuries moved forward, and the domestic cat became more and more woven into the fabric of Egyptian life, Bastet began to change. She became softer, more gentle. She was reimagined as a woman with the head of a cat, carrying a basket and a sistrum, a kind of musical rattle, and sometimes small kittens sat at her feet. Bastet was the protector of the home. Mothers prayed to her for the safety of their children. Women prayed to her for fertility, for the gift of new life. Sailors prayed to her before long voyages across dangerous seas. Families kept small statues of Bastet in their homes, beautiful, carefully made figures of a seated cat, sometimes wearing golden jewelry, sometimes with a scarab beetle at the neck. These were not decorations, they were prayers made solid. The Egyptians believed that Bastet watched over them through the eyes of their cats. The living cat in the house was not just a pet, it was a living connection to the divine. When a cat looked at you with those calm, unblinking eyes, the Egyptians felt that Bastet herself was looking back, that they were seen, that they were protected, that something greater than themselves was paying very close attention. And there was another god connected to cats, a darker, more terrifying connection. Every night, according to Egyptian belief, the sun god Ra traveled through the underworld, a dark and dangerous realm filled with chaos and monsters. The greatest of these monsters was a giant serpent named Apep, or Apophis, the serpent of chaos. Every single night, Ra fought Apep. Every night, the darkness threatened to swallow the sun forever and bring the world to ruin. And in some versions of this great myth, it was a cat, a great and divine cat, who fought at Ra's side. The cat appeared as a protector of light, a destroyer of darkness and chaos. There are famous carvings in ancient Egyptian temples that show a large cat cutting off the head of the serpent Apep with a sharp blade. The cat, in the Egyptian mind, was not just a household guardian, it was a cosmic warrior, a defender of the light of the world. Chapter 5. The Sacred City of Bubastis. If you had traveled to ancient Egypt around 2,500 years ago, and if you had followed the road northeast of what is now the city of Cairo into the region known as the Nile Delta, you would have come to a remarkable city. Its name was Bubastis, and it was the holiest city of Bastet in all the world. The great temple of the goddess stood at its center, surrounded by water, like an island of sacred stone. The Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt around 450 years before the birth of Christ, wrote about the temple of Bastet with barely controlled amazement. He wrote that while the temples of other gods were grand and imposing, the temple at Bubastis was the most beautiful of all. It sat lower than the surrounding city, so that people looked down into it from the busy streets above. Tall trees grew around the temple, and at the center stood the sanctuary, the Sacred Heart, where the goddess lived. But it was not the temple alone that amazed the ancient world. It was the festival. Every year, enormous numbers of people, sometimes hundreds of thousands, traveled to Bubastis for the great festival of Bastet. Herodotus claimed it was the largest and most celebrated festival in all of Egypt. People came by boat along the Nile, singing, playing music, and drinking wine. There was dancing in the streets. There was laughter and joy everywhere you looked. This was remarkable in the ancient world. Many religious festivals were serious, solemn, or even frightening. But the festival of Bastet was a celebration of life, of joy, of abundance. The Egyptians believed that Bastet loved music and dancing, that she was a goddess who wanted her people to celebrate, not to mourn, not to tremble in fear, but to be joyful. In this way, she was quite unusual, a deity of happiness in a world that had so much sorrow. Within the temple complex at Bubastis, cats lived freely. They were fed, cared for, and treated with tremendous respect by priests and priestesses who devoted their lives to these sacred animals. And when these temple cats died, they were treated with great ceremony. Many were mummified, carefully wrapped in linen bandages, sometimes with beautifully painted faces, and placed in special cat-shaped coffins made of carved wood or polished bronze. Hundreds of thousands of cat mummies have been found by archaeologists at sites across Egypt. Chapter 6. Laws of the Sacred Cat. As the reverence for cats grew deeper, the laws protecting them grew stronger. In ancient Egypt, harming a cat, whether by accident or intention, was an extremely serious matter, and killing a cat, even accidentally, could be punished by death. Yes, by death. The life of a cat, in the eyes of Egyptian law, was sacred. It was not simply a legal matter, it was a spiritual one. To harm a cat was to offend the goddess herself, to invite divine punishment upon your entire household. There are accounts from ancient writers describing Egyptian men and women in absolute terror after accidentally causing the death of a cat. Even if the death was completely unintentional, perhaps a cart had passed over a sleeping animal in a narrow street, the person involved would weep openly, tear their clothing, and try desperately to prove their innocence to the watching crowd. The fear was not just of legal punishment, it was the deep, genuine fear of divine anger, of Bastet's terrible displeasure. There is a story told by the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus about a Roman soldier who accidentally killed a cat in Egypt. A crowd gathered immediately. The soldier was a citizen of Rome, at that time the most powerful empire in the world. His government pleaded for his life. Egyptian officials tried urgently to protect him, but the crowd was beyond reason, beyond diplomacy. The man was killed. Such was the depth of feeling that surrounded the sacred cat. When the Persians, under their king Cambyses, invaded Egypt in 525 BC, they understood this law very well. According to some ancient accounts, Persian soldiers carried live cats into battle, holding them as they advanced toward the Egyptian lines. The Egyptian soldiers, who would never risk harming a sacred animal, could not bring themselves to fight back with full force. Whether this story is entirely accurate, we cannot be certain, but it tells us something true about how the ancient world understood Egypt's remarkable love for the cat. There were also strict laws about the export of cats. The Egyptians tried very hard to keep their cats within the borders of Egypt. Cats were considered national treasures. There are historical records of Egyptian agents traveling to foreign lands at considerable expense and effort to buy back cats that had been taken out of the country by merchants or travelers. For a significant period of their history, the Egyptians did not want the rest of the world to have what they had. The sacred cat belonged to Egypt. Chapter 7. Cats in the Home, the Tomb, and the Afterlife. In the homes of ancient Egypt, cats were not kept in baskets or confined to small rooms. They moved freely through the house, sleeping wherever they wished, sitting near the family at meals, resting in warm patches of sunlight by open windows. Wealthy families gave their cats golden earrings and jeweled collars, and when a family cat died, the members of the household would shave their eyebrows in mourning. To shave the eyebrows was a sign of profound grief, the same sign used when a beloved person had died. Archaeologists have found cat skeletons buried lovingly in small graves, sometimes with tiny bowls of food or milk placed carefully beside them. The Egyptians believed deeply in an afterlife, a beautiful realm beyond death called the Field of Reeds, where the soul could live in peace and plenty for eternity. And they believed that their beloved cats would go there too, that the bond between human and cat did not end at death. It continued in a brighter and warmer world forever. Cats also appeared in the painted tombs of their owners. In many Egyptian tomb murals, we can see beautiful scenes of domestic life. A family in a garden, children playing, a man hunting in the green marshes of the Nile. And there, sitting quietly under the chair of the master of the house, almost always is a cat. Not a symbol, not a decorative image, a portrait, a memory. These paintings were not just art, they were prayers, a way of saying, "This is the life I loved, and this is what I wish to carry with me into eternity." There was also a belief that cats possessed a special ability to travel between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Their eyes, which changed shape dramatically with the light, growing wide and dark in the night, then thin and golden in the day, were seen as windows between worlds. A cat sitting very still, staring at nothing, was not simply distracted. It was, perhaps, seeing through a door that human eyes could not perceive, watching over something, keeping a silent and faithful guard. Chapter 8. A Farmer, a Cat, and a Bond. Let me tell you a story now. It is a small story, a quiet story. It is not about kings or gods or grand temples. It is about an ordinary man. His name, let us say, was Kaa. He was a farmer. He lived in a small mud brick house near the edge of the Nile, about 4,000 years ago. He grew wheat and barley. He had a wife and 2 daughters. And one day, unexpectedly, he found himself with a cat. The cat had appeared one evening, walking quietly out of the tall grass near the river. It was thin, and it had a small wound on one leg. Kaa's youngest daughter, no more than 5 years old, reached out her small hand toward it. And the cat, to everyone's surprise, walked slowly forward and touched its nose gently to her fingers. That was the beginning. Within a week, the cat was sleeping in the house. Within a month, it was sleeping on Kaa's own lap in the evenings. Kaa's grain store was small but precious. Every harvest he worried about the mice. Every year he lost some grain to these small, quiet thieves. But with the cat in the house and in the storage room, the mice kept their distance. His grain was safer. His family ate better through the dry season. The cat had, very simply, made their lives more secure. And Ha understood this. He fed the cat carefully. He spoke to it quietly, the way you might speak to a valued friend at the end of a long day. When the cat was old, when it moved slowly and slept more than it ate, Ha noticed every small change. He brought it pieces of fish, the best parts, saved from his own meal. His wife wrapped warm cloth around it on cold nights. His daughters stroked it gently and sang to it. When the cat finally died, still and silent on a small bed of river reeds, Ra wept. His daughters wept. They shaved their eyebrows. They buried the cat near the house, with a small bowl of grain placed carefully beside it. And Ra prayed to Bastet that evening, standing in the last light of the sun, his voice low and sincere, thanking the goddess for the gift she had sent him all those years ago, walking out of the tall grass by the river. This story is imagined, but it is not invented. We know that scenes like this exact tenderness, this exact grief, happened in thousands of homes across thousands of years of Egyptian history, because the evidence is there, in the paintings, in the graves, in the mummies wrapped in linen. The love was real, and it was profound. And so we come to the end of our story, or perhaps to the beginning of a reflection. Why did the ancient Egyptians worship cats? We have talked about grain and mice and serpents and scorpions. We have talked about Bastet and Bubastis and sacred laws and great festivals. All of that is true. And all of that matters. But I do not think those are the deepest reasons. I think the real reasons go further. I think the real reasons live somewhere inside the human heart itself. I think the ancient Egyptians worshipped cats because the cat gave them something they desperately needed, something that all human beings in every age have needed. It gave them a sense of safety in a world that was often very unsafe. It gave them beauty in a world that could be harsh and brutal. It gave them a companion, a creature that chose them freely, without being forced, without obligation. A creature that simply decided, I will stay here, I will be with you. And perhaps most of all, the cat gave them a feeling of connection to something beyond themselves, to the divine, to a mystery they could not fully explain, but could deeply feel. When a cat sat on your lap in the evening and purred, that low, warm, steady sound, the world outside felt a little smaller, a little less frightening. The darkness was still there, but so was this small, warm creature, and somehow that was enough. There is something very human about this. We have always reached for beauty. We have always tried to find meaning in the things around us. We have always wanted to believe that we are not alone, not in the universe, not in our homes, not in the darkness of the night. The ancient Egyptians looked into the eyes of a cat and felt perhaps that they were being seen, that they mattered, that something, somewhere, was watching over them with calm, unblinking, golden eyes. Thousands of years have passed since the last priest of Bastet tended the sacred cats of Bubastis. The great temple has crumbled into ruin. The city has returned to dust. The festivals and the music and the crowds on the Nile are long gone. And yet, right now, at this very moment, all across the world, in millions of homes on every continent, people are living with cats, feeding them, watching them sleep in patches of afternoon sunlight, feeling comfort in their warm, steady, purring presence. We do not call it worship anymore. We do not build temples of polished stone. We do not shave our eyebrows in grief when they die, though some of us perhaps feel a sorrow as deep and real as if we might. But something of what the ancient Egyptians felt is still alive in us, that quiet, inexplicable love, That sense that a cat is somehow more than just an animal, that it is a companion, a mystery, a small, warm, purring piece of something that we have never quite been able to name. The ancient Egyptians understood something that we are still learning, in our own ways, in our own time, that the world is richer when we pay attention to beauty, that life is deeper when we share it with each other and with the creatures who choose quietly and freely to live alongside us. That love, in all its forms, in all its sizes, even in the form of a small animal sleeping on your lap, is the thread that connects us to something eternal. This has been English through great stories. Thank you for listening. Thank you for traveling through time with me today, all the way back to the banks of the Nile, to a world of golden temples and desert stars, and to the quiet golden eyes of a cat sitting in the warm evening light of ancient Egypt. May your own world be full of beauty and wonder and warmth. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning. And always keep your heart open to the stories that the world is quietly, patiently, always trying to tell you.